Well, thank you for joining us again here on InSight. Today, Father Michael has a very special interview with local TV weather personality Tom Russell. So let's get to it. Here's Father Michael.
Hi, everybody. It's Father Michael Scalzi, proud to be one of the volunteers here at Vision Resources of Central Pennsylvania. We're here today with another one of our InSight interviews, and this is an interview that I've been looking forward to because with me today is a good friend of mine and someone who you're very familiar with. He's Tom Russell, the chief meteorologist at CBS 21.
Hello.
And Tom, thank you for coming in and being with us today.
This is awesome. It's an honor to be here, and to hang out with you is always fun. So let's do this.
All right. I appreciate that. What I thought we could do is, before we get to weather, tell me about Tom Russell. I mean, you and I have been friends for many years, and I know who you are, and you have a beautiful family and all that. Where did you start out with your career? You were in radio originally, right?
Yeah, that's where you and I kind of hit it off. We started on radio. So I'm originally from Baltimore, so just a little south here, central Pennsylvania. But in broadcasting, you got to move around to move up. So I went to school in Ohio at University of Dayton. I started in radio, did radio about 8 years, moved all around the country, and then I got a shot at doing TV weather in Panama City, Florida, of all places, and got on the air there and did pretty well. So I kind of made that jump from radio to TV, from there to Orlando, and then been here 22, going on 23 years.
You skipped a part. How did you study to become a meteorologist?
Well, it was interesting because I'd come up through radio and worked really hard, and I was actually in San Diego doing radio, and the place where I worked was also a TV station, so it was a radio station, TV station combined, and one of the folks there let me do a little audition tape as a weather person, so I got to go stand in front of the green screen, and a lot of your skills from radio, being able to talk off the cuff and just have a little personality, that kind of translated well, and I started sending out this tape, and by the time I had taken a radio job in Panama City, I started to get some feedback on the TV tape, and I was able to make the jump to television. So after I got the job, part of the payment was that they would pay me to go back to school to get my meteorology degree. So as I was working, I was also studying. Fortunately, this was before I had kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was tough, but it was a fun transition to make, and it really worked out well for me.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. It's funny you should say that because when I was in Memphis, I worked at an AM station that had a TV station next door. And but now that's back in the 80s.
Right.
And it seemed to me, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed to me that doing the weather back then seemed like a walk in the park to me. It wasn't anywhere near as intricate or the way things are today. I mean, I watch you.
Right.
I watch Steve Knight in the morning.
Sure.
Ed Russo. And I think to myself, these guys are really smart. Like, how do you keep up with the technology for this?
Your instinct is right. If you go back to the 70s when you and I were growing up and watching TV broadcasts, you had the hard news, and then you had sports at the end, and weather was kind of like the little in-between part, the not-so-serious part of the news. And that really changed in the 80s when Doppler radar came along, and they really wanted people to be meteorologists and could actually do the scientific part of the job. So things definitely changed in the late 80s, early 90s, as you had to be a meteorologist to get those jobs. So you're right, that definitely changed. So I think now that things have the technology has gotten so amazing. Like, we rely on computer models and things that we just didn't have in the 70s, where a lot of the if you go back in time, it was the bubbly blonde who was delivering the weather, and it wasn't about the science. It was just about they looked good on TV or they spoke well or whatever. So it definitely changed over the in the course of the 90s.
Yeah. I'm not going to use the term bubbly blonde, but I'll let you do that, and I'll see you in court. But
I'm just saying.
no,
it was
it's
the 70s. Come
No,
on.
no. You know what? You're exactly right. And I think back to those days, and the people who were doing the weather were just great looking people.
Yes.
I mean, that was just it. It was just completely the looks, and I don't know if they had a teleprompter with a script that they just read from.
Some did, yeah, that's true.
And
Some
didn't
did.
deviate from anything.
Yep.
But one of the things that I really like, and I'm not kissing up to you, I promise, is with you and Steve and Ed. You guys are not just personalities, and especially you, and I don't know how you do this. You are out in the community constantly. I look at your Facebook page and I look at your reports when you're doing the weather. You're everywhere. And my question for you is, I have a feeling that you think that that's really important, and I think it's really important. Is it really important?
It totally is, and to me, it's part of the job. I remember when I took the job at WHB in Harrisburg. It was like part of it was, we want you to be out in the community. We want you to represent the station. And I think I took that a step further, is that I have a responsibility I have this really cool job, and I have this really cool, almost spokesperson kind of feel. And if I can bring attention to needs or help people out, I want to do that. I just really enjoy that. I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. So you're right. I enjoy, for me, I got involved with Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. I like to do stuff with the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank or whoever the need is. So it is very important to me, and it's very satisfying.
And obviously, it's good promotion for the television station. That's
Sure.
a byproduct. But it seems to me that you guys go overboard, and even your news anchors are not stiffs. And I'm not saying I'm not saying that to compare them to anybody, because I
Right.
think there's some wonderful news anchors in this market.
Sure.
But CBS 21, to me, has a personality to it that I think is unusual. And even your news anchors, like I saw Jasmine the other night, she was outdoors,
Right.
and she was still anchoring the news, but she was doing it
From
I can't remember where it was. There was something going on, and,
Right.
and she was there. Is there a trend to get news people, meteorologists, sports people out of the studio and onto the street?
Yes, definitely. People are used to seeing their news on Twitter or hearing it on Facebook, and it's usually you're on the scene, or somebody who's on the scene, or you're right there. And the idea is that we, as the news people, should be able to do that, should be able to bring you that. And Jasmine is really good at being out live and bringing you the information. But there's definitely this push to be there. And that always was the part of news, but as you mentioned, use the term stiff. Sometimes we get so worried about how we looked, or we wanted that anchor feel. Now it's just more of a much more real feel. Hey, we're here, this is what's happening, and we want to bring it to you as quickly as we can. And we can do that now with social media. We can give you a live tweet. Hey, man, we're here, it's happening. We can take you there with a Facebook Live or something like that. So I think the tools that we have to work with has helped change that. But there's one other thing that you mentioned, I think that's so important that we do at CBS 21, is we take the news seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously. And that comes across.
Interesting. Hey, if you just joined us, this is Father Michael, one of the volunteers here at Vision Resources, and I'm so happy to have a good friend of mine with me today. It's Tom Russell, Chief Meteorologist at CBS 21 in Harrisburg.
Nice to be here.
And thanks again for coming in, Tom.
Yeah,
really
this is
appreciate
fun.
it.
This is fun.
And just to finish up with this thought that we're talking about, I had Tim Lambert from WITF here
Sure.
a number of months ago,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking about the challenges that local radio and TV have these days, and you just mentioned it, where people are getting their news and I can dial up the Weather Channel app, I can
Sure.
dial up the CBS 21 weather app, and I can get I don't have to watch you,
Right.
but I enjoy watching you, because I want to see the graphics, I want to see what's going on, and I'm a news junkie. So
You are, yes.
yeah. Do you find that the challenge is getting greater
Oh my gosh, yes. It used to be our competition. In our world was Channel 27 or Channel 8, and now our competition is anybody with a keyboard in their basement going, "Oh, it's going to snow on Saturday," and all that information is out there on all these different platforms. So our challenge is to be relevant. But I think the biggest challenge for the industry is TV is people aren't sitting down and watching the 6 o'clock news. They can get their, like you mentioned, the push notification on their phone where they get the information instantly. So the landscape has changed to everybody is our competition. And I think that just comes back to something you mentioned before. I want to gravitate to somebody I trust or a source that I trust that I can count because there's just so much information coming at you all at once. And the hard part for us in the social media realm is people aren't taking the time to verify anything. So you might see a report on your phone or on Facebook that, so-and-so was arrested. And then we find out, well, he wasn't really arrested. He was charged or he was detained by police or something like that. There's not a lot of fact checking going on in those initial things. And whereas we as a news establishment still want to verify, still want to confirm things before we report it. You always had that old reporter thing. You need at least two sources before you go to air with anything. So yeah, there's a real challenge there about how we can move forward because people are like, well, why didn't you show that? The biggest thing, honestly, Father Mike, is video. Like some people just show a video without any verification or getting permission. We, as an established news company, we have to get permission from a person to use their video. And sometimes it'll be, it's frustrating to us because it's 5 hours later before we can actually, put it on TV or put it on our website or whatever,
Sure.
So that's really tough.
Tom Russell, here at Vision Resources of Central Pennsylvania, our mission is to assist people who are blind and visually impaired. They certainly have challenges that you and I don't experience. Mm-hmm. And so what we do is we do whatever we can to help people who are dealing with those challenges. So I'm going to ask you to get out your Windex and clean off your crystal ball. And I'd like you to take a look into the future of winter 2024-2025 and tell us what you see.
All right. Well, it feels like it's already here. I mean, as we record this, it's 26 degrees. So here's the scoop. We really haven't had winter in the last 3 years here in central PA. It's been really frustrating if you're a winter lover. So from that standpoint, we're strictly overdue. But basically, if you kind of back up a little bit, what we look at is the big global patterns, and I'm sure you've heard of El Nino and La Nina, and those are basically what we call the southern oscillations. So if you think of kind of a bathtub, if you slosh the water to one side, it reverses and comes back. Imagine that on a super large scale in the equatorial Pacific. So where those cool waters or warmer waters set up, over months, years, have a lot to do with our weather patterns that end up coming across the United States. So in a short version of that, we were expecting a strong La Nina, which would mean another mild winter. So here we are in December. That has not materialized to the strength that we thought. So we're going to be in what we call neutral phase, so not really La Nina or El Nino. And that gives us a better shot at a more normal winter. So I hate using those kind of terms, but that's kind of how we talk about it. Normal being, after the last 3 years of being mild, normal is going to be pretty tough for us. It's going to be pretty cold for us. So overall, and especially the other thing we look at is, what happened with tropical season. It was pretty active tropical season. All that stuff, has analogs, we call them. What happened in the past? When did we see, an active season coming off a warmer than average summertime? So as we put all that together, I think we're going to see a more active winter pattern. And we kind of already have. We've already had a little bit of snow at times. We've had this cold early in the season. That's something we did not have last year. So basically, I think we get cold early. We got a good shot at snow here right before Christmas. And then I think we have a kind of a January thaw. And then we're colder again for February, the month of February. And then the cold lingers. So I think we're going to have some cold into March. And if you're from central Pennsylvania, you know that we can get some pretty good snows in March. So if you're a snow lover, I'm a little more optimistic about this upcoming winter.
just putting your name on my naughty list here. I'm not a big fan of cold weather, not a big fan of snow, and
but you got to admit we haven't had a good winter in a while. So even
I don't have to admit anything. Okay, don't tell me what I have to admit. If we were just sailing through with nothing at all, I would be just fine.
Well, I think we're going to be slightly above average temperature-wise and slightly below average snowfall. Snowfall for our region is about 28 inches, just shy of 30 inches for the season. So as you know, if you get a good snow, a good 8-inch, 9-inch snowfall, that takes a good chunk of that.
You're listening to InSight, a presentation of Vision Resources of Central Pennsylvania Audio Services. I'm one of the volunteers here at Vision Resources, Father Michael, and the other voice is that of Tom Russell, Chief Meteorologist at CBS 21 here in Harrisburg. Can we dip our toe into a potentially controversial subject?
Oh, sure we can.
Global warming. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's such I hate the term because it's such a nebulous term. To me, global warming is like, or climate change is like saying the grass is green, water is wet, that kind of stuff. So the climate is always changing. That's one of the things that, you study early on in your meteorology school, and it's always been part of what we do. So the controversial part is whether or not man is causing it. And if you look at some of the studies over the last several years, the basic theory is that if we drive our SUVs and we breathe, that we're putting too much CO2 into the atmosphere. And there's no doubt that since the Industrial Revolution, the mid-1800s, we have put more CO2 into the atmosphere. But what people don't understand about CO2 is it's not a one-to-one relationship. So the way I describe CO2 is if you take a window, for example, and you paint it black. You have black paint and you paint that window, it's pretty much done all the damage with that first coat of paint, right? So you can keep adding black paint to it, but it doesn't have the same effect. And that's the way CO2 works. So it's not like, more CO2 is bad, more CO2 is bad. You have that initial impact, and then it has less and less impact over time. So what we found is that, the general belief is that CO2 drives temperature. So if you were looking at a graph, CO2 goes up, temperature goes up. What we're finding is it's just the opposite. As temperature goes up, CO2 follows, and it's a lagging indicator. So CO2, bottom line, is not the enemy. CO2 is plant food. CO2 is what allows us to, we're carbon-based life forms, and it's a beautiful thing. So more CO2 is good. Then if you look over geological time, millions and millions of years, we're at an all-time low of CO2. So my takeaway is CO2 is not the enemy. Do we have some impact on the amount of CO2? Sure, but it's not a bad thing.
What are your thoughts, Tom, though, on a global level? We could put all sorts of legislation in place in the United States and restrictions and things like that, but we have no control as to what's going on in other countries. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, you kind of said it right there. You don't have any control, so you got to control the controllables. So, I don't want people to think that there's not pollution. There's certainly pollution. There's certainly ways that we can be better stewards of the earth we have. But there's only certain things that we can control. We can't control what China's doing as far as pollution and whatnot. So we want to be doing the best thing we can do in our own backyard first, and then hopefully the rest of the world will see that. So I think there's certain things we can certainly put our efforts into. So, for example, rather than sit here try to say, even if you believe that the Earth's going to go up 1.5 degrees over the next 200 years, you're better off spending money on mitigation and preventing disasters than you are trying to stop that temperature rise. We're talking about millions of dollars and destroying ecosystems to maybe stop a degree or two rise in temperature, which, you're looking over history is going to happen anyway. So let's put our resources into how we build our homes, how we, let's not keep building in harm's way, that kind of thing. Good example around here. A couple of years ago, if you remember, we had the flood of 2011. And after that, I believe it was South Londonderry Township. They went to these folks whose houses flooded year after, flood after flood after flood. And they said, look, let us buy your land. We'll relocate you, and we're not going to do this again. That to me makes sense. So I'd rather see my money spent on those kind of mitigation factors than some pie in the sky arbitrary goal of let's stop the temperature from rising 200 years from now.
Is there a lethargy, or do people just not care? Because here you are saying 200 years from now, do people say, well, not my problem?
No, I think it's much more acute than that. The problem is you have, let's just use Pennsylvania as an example. You have a township board, for example, right? And let's say you flood every 10 years. Well, that board's only on there for 4 or 5 years. So what they do is they go ahead and approve Project X for this neighborhood to be built here. And while they're on the board, it hasn't flooded in 5 years. They're like, sure, go ahead and build there. Well, if you look over long-term stuff, that place is going to flood. So what happens is people don't look far enough down the road to say this is not a good idea, or hey, we built this warehouse, now this water has no place to go, now it ends up on X road or somebody's property that they didn't see before. So it's really an acute problem where it's not intentional, but it's short-sightedness, because your time on the board was 4 years and everything was great, so you green-lighted this project, but in year 6, that's when the flood came.
CBS 21 Chief Meteorologist Tom Russell is our guest today on InSight. Tom, you are out in the community, as we talked about before, and you shake a lot of hands, you talk to a lot of folks. What are some topics and concerns that are out there these days besides weather? People do the same thing to you that they do to me. They take you into their confidence and share their concerns with you?
Sure. They do. I think the important part is that you see it firsthand, because it's so easy to dismiss things and not feel other people's pain when you see it from afar, or you're just you're not experiencing it. So one of the things I like to do is I help out the St. Francis Soup Kitchen in Allison Hill. And the reason I like that is they are meeting a need at its most basic point. I'm hungry, here's food. I'm cold, here's some clothing. Here's a hot meal, whatever they need. And I love that, because I think that's what we're called to do, is meet the most basic need at its point of need. And it is that simple. People say, well, I can't make a difference. You can make a difference, and it can be that simple. But carrying that out, the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank, which ultimately feeds the food to St. Francis and all these other food banks and whatnot, they extend from the Maryland border all the way to the New York border. And every time I talk to them, they said the need is greater, the need is greater, the need is greater. And as we have a downturn in the economy, or we have some natural disaster, the need does become great. So to answer your question, I think people need to see that need, but it can be overwhelming if you look at it at that large scale. What you need to decide to do is say, what can I do today? What can I do this week that's going to make a difference in somebody's life? And I think if you take it, how do they say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Mm-hmm. And you do that. But what I find, Father, and what I hope people take away who hear this, there's a lot in it for you. You're going to feel better because you did something. You made a difference in somebody's life. As small as that may be, we kind of all get that spirit here at Christmas time, but we need to carry that through the rest of the year.
People say to me, and I'm sure they say to you, and they say to everybody, I'm so busy. I have so much going on. I got kids. I got, family. I got all this stuff. There's nothing wrong with writing out a check.
Amen to that.
I hate to put it in those simple terms, but if you are so busy, but you can write out a check and do some good for the food bank or whatever charity is near and dear to your heart. I know you do a lot of work with the Heart Association as well, and the need is out there. So, if that's the best you can do, that could be the best you can do.
But that is a good thing. I mean, if you have the resources and somebody else has the legs and you're the finance behind it, that's huge too.
Yeah. Father Michael, one of the volunteers here at Vision Resources of Central Pennsylvania, with my good friend Tom Russell, in our closing minutes here. Tom, what do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? I do like to, I'm into cars, so I do a lot of the car shows around here. And then once in a while, we take those cars up to Pocono and run them around.
You're really into cars. Don't just say you're into cars. You're really into cars.
The sad thing is I don't have the money to be into cars.
Yeah.
I just like to be around them. So I do enjoy that. Let's see. I have 3 daughters, so we try to do fun things with them. I have a daughter in Millersville, so we watch her play volleyball and whatnot.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So you try to get involved with their life, and but it's fun. Let me throw it back on you. Why do you do all the great stuff that you do?
I have always been someone, and my father, may he rest in peace, Italian guy in New York, worked a full-time job as an editor at McGraw-Hill Book Company, and then worked in the post office at night to put my sister and me through Catholic school and all that. I got it from him. I love being busy. I am not the guy who sits at home watching Friends reruns.
That's me. Yeah.
I can't do it. I mean, I wish I had more time to read because I love to read. But Tom, there's not one thing that I do that I dread. I mean, I love certainly my church. I love the work I do here with Vision Resources and all the other things I do in the community. And, I just love it. I love it. And
Good for you.
My Italian grandmother used to say, we rest when we die. So that's what we'll do. We'll rest when we die. So,
well, you're an amazing person, and I want everybody to know that the things you do, you're kind of an unsung hero sometimes. So we appreciate all that you do, especially just things like this, getting the word out for folks. So thank you.
Well, you read that exactly the way I wrote it, so thank you. You did a good job with that script. Tom, what are your plans for the holidays? Anything special?
No, I'm a big Christmas Eve guy. So in our family, we do an early mass. Even though the kids are like in their 20s now, they still want to go to the children's mass.
Oh, no, really? Oh my gosh.
So we do that. Then we come home and we have the nice meal, and then they like to do the Hershey Sweet Lights. That's kind of our tradition.
Beautiful, yeah.
On Christmas Eve, and then.
Do you do that on Christmas Eve?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So that's all part of the day, and then the my wife came up with this. Her family did it. We all play Sorry. You know the board game Sorry.
Yeah.
Under the Christmas tree.
Yeah.
So that can get a little lively, which is interesting.
Your wife is such a hoot. Can I tell the quick story about running into you in Giant? Can I tell that story?
Yes.
So I'm running into Tom at Giant. He's there with his wife and one of his daughters, and he comes over. He says, "Hey, can you do me a favor?" He says, because it was around Easter time. He says, "Can you convince my wife to make lamb for Easter?" And I said, "Oh yeah, of course I can." So I yelled over to Mrs. Weatherman, and I said, "Are you going to make lamb for my friend Tom here at Easter?" And she looked at me and she said, "No."
That's her.
And she just turned and walked away.
That's her in a nutshell right there.
Well, it sounds
funny.
like Tom, and I know your family, you have a beautiful, beautiful family, and
Thank you.
And you're really blessed. I think all the good work that you do in the community comes back and blesses you, and as it should,
Well, thank you.
So thank you for all that you do, which is really wonderful. And I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you, would you come back again and do this on a seasonal basis?
I would love that. That'd be fun. Could we get another host, though? That'd be. I'm kidding. No, that'd be fun. Yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, that would be fun. So thank you again for your time. Thank you for your insight into what we can expect for the winter months. I know the folks that we provide services for who are blind and visually impaired will really, really like to know that information so they can prepare as well. So, Tom, God bless you and have a most wonderful Christmas and New Year's.
Thank you, Father Michael. You too.
All right. So this is InSight from Vision Resources of Central Pennsylvania. Thanks so much for listening. I'm one of the volunteers, Father Michael Scalzi, and have a great day.